Hi, everyone. I'm Gold Derby News and Features Editor Ray Richmond, and I'm here today with Oscar nominee Paul Giamatti, who stars in the new feature from director Alexander Payne, The Holdovers. Paul, your character, Paul Hunnam, is a lovably curmudgeonly professor who's disliked by pretty much everyone, including himself. Um, did you base him on anyone in particular from your own educational experience?
When Alexander first saw like an early draft of the script, it immediately reminded me of a guy that I had as a biology teacher in 10th grade. And um, that really fired off a lot of things for me. He was very similar. And even to the extent of my suspecting or feeling it, even at 15 years old or whatever I was, that he wasn't a bad guy underneath it all, underneath all the sarcasm and the like. That guy really came back to me in a way that I almost had to keep putting him out of my mind because I didn't want to be doing some impersonation of that guy. But that was a big influence on it.
As far as we know, is he still alive around?
I would find it very hard to believe that that man would still be alive. I mean, I don't know how old he was, but he was a chain smoking, kind of hard living guy, and in the old school mode of these kinds of guys. So I'd be amazed if he was still around. And he was a biology teacher, and he just abused his body terribly. So I would be amazed if he was.
I wonder what he would have thought of Paul Hunnam.
I do too. I wonder what a lot of these people, because there's guys out there who will probably see this and go, oh yeah, that's me. I wonder what they'll think of it. I don't know. I don't know.
How do you see that character, Paul? Do you see him as a decent man who's misunderstood, or
Yeah.
something more slightly more sinister?
No, I don't find him sinister. I don't find him sinister. I mean, he's settled into a kind of persona. He's settled into a bit of a shtick, and in the movie you watch him break out of it. Alexander yesterday made an interesting distinction. He was talking about something, and he said there's a difference between niceness and kindness. And he said this man is not nice, but he's kind. And I was like, that's true. And that he put something very well that I felt about the character and that I hope comes through about the character. And he doesn't care about being liked, actually, I don't think, in some ways. But it's like, but because he feels it's the best way to convey these important values. I don't think he's wrong. He goes too far and he does it the wrong way. And I don't think I think he's a kind man. He's not nice, but he's a kind man.
That's an interesting distinction. I
Yeah,
never really thought of it that way, but
me either.
and he thinks he's dispensing tough love.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. And it's in the classical mode. This is how they've done it for centuries. And it's worked. And it's worked at Barton and all this crap. And it's like and he's clinging to that stuff. He doesn't have anything else to cling to. And
Yeah. I mean, well, you were a boarding school kid too, right? But not exactly like what the students at Barton are experiencing.
no, no. I was not I went to a prep school. I did not board there though, which is interesting because that's a whole different experience. And in some ways gives you maybe a better vantage point to observe it. I don't know. But I didn't have the full experience of living there with those guys, which must just be, you know, really insane.
I imagine the torture of each other is even more extreme than what we saw in the film. Yeah, you read stories of of what just some of the pranks and what they
Yeah,
do to
well,
each
it's
other.
all based in that British system, public school system, which is just legendarily harsh. And so it's like, I don't think they're the same quite anymore. I think they've changed. I don't think it's possible for them to be the sort of same thing, but they're rough. They're rough environments.
And teenagers just aren't human yet, anyway, as we know.
Teenagers are already awful. And so it's like, it's just a really dangerous brew of stuff going on. And you get these bitter people who are pissed off about having to teach these kids. And it's rough. It can get rough.
What was your reaction, Paul, the first time you read the script? Did you just fall in love with it immediately?
Yeah, I thought it was great. And I saw an early draft of it. It didn't change hugely. Yeah, no, I thought it was terrific. And I love this kind of setting of things. And I love a Christmas thing. I'm a sucker for a Christmas thing. And a melancholy Christmas thing is great. And I thought it was very funny. And I loved all three of those characters. Um, I just thought it was lovely. I loved the period thing. I really did. I really did look forward to being able to do it. Yeah.
It really doesn't, it looks like it was made in 1970. It's not just set then. It looks like
Yeah.
it was made and forgotten in
Yeah.
1970.
That's a real trick to be able to pull that stuff off, to not overdo it or underdo it, to hit the right tone of it. And the design, all the designers, the costumes, the hair and makeup, the production design was right on point because they didn't take it too far, and everything looked actually lived in, and people looked a little crappy, and everyone was a little greasy and kind of like not looking great too, which people didn't. You go see those movies now, and you're amazed at how people's, Cliff Robertson's hair is blowing all over the place, and he looks, and you're just like, wow, there wasn't a guy running in every 2 seconds to comb his hair down, and I don't think there was. I just, for some reason, they wanted it to look like that. There was more
Uh-huh.
of an appetite for it to look real in some way. That's funny. That just doesn't exist anymore.
They really threaded that needle. You're right, of that
Yeah.
period and everything. Having a father who was a Yale professor and eventually president of that university
Mhm.
had to put you around that elite East Coast world of academia quite a bit.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I grew up in ground zero of that kind of thing. And so that also, I mean, besides my biology teacher in 10th grade, there was a whole host of other people that when I saw the finished movie, I didn't even realize I was sort of drawing on, that were popping up. And I go, "Oh my God, that's like that colleague of my father's, the way he took such pleasure in his own wit and stuff like that." It was like, oh my God, that reminds me of that guy. And I didn't even realize I was sort of being like that guy.
Yeah. And speaking of Yale, you had that drama school in common with your co-star Davine,
Yes,
Joy
indeed.
Randolph.
Yes,
I
indeed.
I I spoke to her last week, and she thought that helped give the two of you kind of a shorthand together on the set.
I think it probably did because she was one of those people where we didn't need to talk about anything. We never talked about a thing. We would just walk in the room and do it. But she's just extraordinarily great and amazing and professional and amazing. But probably, yeah, I think the similar experience coming from the similar, I mean, it's like coming from a boarding school or something. It's a different version of that kind of thing. But I think it did put us on the same page, yeah.
And you had great chemistry together too. And as you did with Dominic Sessa, uh,
Mhm.
talk about working with a first time actor and whose whose shoulders a lot of the film really rides on.
Movie really, if the kid doesn't work, I really don't think the movie would have. No matter how good me and Devine were, it wouldn't be the same thing if the kid wasn't really on point. He certainly didn't seem like he'd never been on film before. I mean, he was remarkably comfortable, but he was very serious and watchful, and he was taking it all in. And he was wonderful. He's a really good guy. I really liked being with him, and so that made the chemistry thing work really well. From the second I saw his audition tapes, I thought, oh, that kid, and he seems very intelligent. He conveys intelligence without having to do a whole lot. So you buy that this kid is smart, and he's kind of sitting on it and stuff, and he's tremendous. And I never had any moment of feeling like I wasn't working with somebody who was going to be right there and capable. There was nothing. Everything felt very connected and professional, and it was remarkable. He's amazing.
It is remarkable because I mean he's keeping up with such professionals as you and Davine, which is not easy to do. He's never been on camera before, yet you wouldn't know it. He's so charismatic and poised the whole way through.
So charismatic and poised, and he's one of those guys. I mean, like I say, I saw his audition, and it was a little rough. He just needed a little push that Alexander gave him, and it was fine. But it was more. There was a portion of his audition tape which was just him sitting there, and the casting agent was talking to him, and I was like, he's one of these people. He doesn't need to do anything. His face is so interesting to look at, and his face feels very period, too, and it felt
Yeah,
very.
you're right. It kind of
He
does.
looks like it, and I was like, he looks like he's from the 70s. He looks like he's from a 70s movie, too. And it was like the whole thing just made sense. And it felt like a very 70s thing to put the kid who's never done anything in the movie. It felt very kind of 70s and like, let's just do it. Man. Let's just put that kid in the movie. And it was so it all felt right.
Yeah, absolutely. You and Alexander Paul did such powerful work the last time you collaborated on Sideways.
Yeah.
Yet it took almost 2 decades to connect on a project again.
Hmm. Yeah, well, not for the lack of trying. I mean, we've talked about on and off, and I keep mentioning this, hoping that I'm going to manifest this. That we talked about doing a private eye thing, a private detective thing, where I would, and I would still love to. I just know he would do something great with that. But we tried to do, the movie Downsizing was something he wanted me to do, and it didn't work out, which was totally fine. But then this popped up, and we tried to make it several years running, and it just never worked out schedule wise. And I was on a TV show for a long time, and it kind of kept screwing the schedule up, and he really wanted it to be winter. And it worked out great because we had a real winter, real snow.
Oh yeah, you did. I think you can tell the difference. Well, I don't know if you can
You
tell the
can
difference between
absolutely
anything
tell.
in CGI now.
I think you can totally tell the difference. It's not that
Yeah,
soap stuff that like no, you can feel the difference that it's real snow. You can totally feel it. And then you have
yeah.
this amazing cinematographer, Igel Brill, who's Danish, and you've got a guy who can film snow and cold. Like so, it's like it's perfect.
The whole idea of found family in this film, Paul, is such a potent elixir in the story. I mean, you meet, you form tight bonds, you split, and I think I've heard you talk about this before. It's really kind of a metaphor for being a film actor.
Yeah, it is. It's the same function as being, you create these makeshift families, which I think actors clearly have some desire for something like that, but not too much, so that you break up and you go your own way. So it's unusual to really form lasting friendships, and it's great when you do, because it really means it. But it is that I keep referencing that movie Shoplifters from a few years ago, the Japanese movie, in which one of the characters literally just says, maybe the family you were born into isn't the family you should be with. But in this instance, these people are probably never going to see each other again once they move on. So it's really makeshift and temporary, but it's a really significant thing for
Is
all
that hard, or does it make you uneasy knowing, I can't get too close to these people because, we're never going to see each other again?
might make it easier because you go, I'm never going to see this person again. You know what I mean? It might actually be easier in some ways, in some instances. But it can be, a film has never felt as sad when it ends as a play feels. And I've never been exactly sure what it
Hmm.
is about a play. When a play ends, even a awful play that you've done, and sometimes especially an awful play you've done, the sense of real visceral bonding with people is so deep, you really feel it for a while. I've never totally felt exactly that kind of thing. I would say Alexander's movies have done that to me, where I feel sad when it ends, but it's different.
I often tell people I don't think I've ever seen an actor who does as much with his eyes on camera as you do. You know everything you're thinking based on your eyes, which I think is really a, a talent and a skill that you have.
That's great.
But there was one thing I really didn't understand in the film. At the very end, when you point to when you have that thing with your eye,
Yes.
how did was that CG? How did you do that? And not that I want to spoil
Oh
anything.
no, I know. I'm told I'm not at liberty to discuss it, and I haven't. But it was definitely it was a. I can tell you it was not CGI. I'll say that much. And so there could only be a few other things, but we played around with it in clever ways, simple, clever ways that I think hopefully make it hard to track for the audience which eye you should be looking at. You know.
I knew you weren't going to be able to answer that, but I still had to ask.
No, no, no. It's been kind of fun in some ways to not talk about it, and leave people guessing, which is good.
I love the fact that all three of the lead characters in this film have their own arc, and I think that really is part of the power of it. That we
Yeah,
really see them go through so many transformations and changes as
yeah,
characters, as people,
yeah.
and that had to really appeal to you with the script too, I
Totally,
imagine.
and very distinct, but then they mesh in certain ways. And it's a real, it's three stages of life thing too. That's really distinctly done well. Like the kid, the person who's, starting out in the middle, coming to a close of something. He's alive, but what's going to happen with that other, but my character, I don't know. But you definitely see three people at three different stages of their lives, and really with different sets of trauma and stress and sadness and stuff. And but you get the full picture of all of them in a really great way. Yeah, it did
So are
totally.
you Have you and Alexander discussed in any more detail that Private Eye project? Are
No,
you?
he said.
Is it going to be the Giamatti files?
Oh my God! See, but something along those lines, something along the lines of the guy who lives in the kind of crappy trailer somewhere, and he said, "I really, really want to do this to see you get shot at all the time, and have people like punch you in the stomach all the time. You know, just those classic things that happens to those guys all the time. You know." And it was like there's something there that I think could be really, really fun to do with him. I just think it would work in some great way. He says he wants to do a western, which would be really terrific. I think he'd make a great western.
Would you be in the Western too?
I would hope. I would love to be in the western. I'm not gonna ask for any, but I mean, I would love to be in the western. I don't know what I would play in the western, but I hope he does one, whether I'm in it or not. It'd be great.
I think we're going to wrap things there. The Holdovers is playing in theaters everywhere this holiday season. Paul Giamatti, best of luck to you this award season yourself,
Thanks,
sir.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining us today at Gold Derby.
Real pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.